Okay, Valentine's Day dinner. Valentine's Day is a very special dinner in our house. It's the time of year when I get to create something because my sweetie prefers something new and interesting that we can enjoy together at home. So that's sort of our tradition. So today, for this year, for our Valentine's Day, I got lucky because I was able to settle on a flavor profile first before deciding even the menu. And that flavor profile comes courtesy of the Franciscan Sisters of the Immaculate in Alabang Hills. I was sitting in my Kuya's house at breakfast, and Kuya served me a drink which had a really interesting flavor. And it is a healthy drink full of superfoods that the sisters prepare. The sisters do tremendous work with the elderly and sick. And Sister Maria reported to me that this is almost a miracle cure. It's really very healthy. It's got organic turmeric and garlic, and it's got some slightly bitter and aromatic overtones to it. And it's got a wonderful savory profile that we're going to use for chicken. So we're going to use this for chicken, and then we're going to serve that chicken with Japanese sweet potatoes, and as a counterpoint to that, we're going to have a red pepper sauce. Okay, so we're going to do the chicken last so I don't cross-contaminate my world. So let's start with the basic marinade. Okay, so for the basic marinade, we're going to use an oil-based marinade. I'm not real fond of brining because if we're trying to cook healthy and watch our fats, it tends to dry out the meat. And so what we're going to do with this chicken is we're going to put it on a nice vertical rack so that all the fat will drip down, and then we'll get a nice layer of crispy skin all around the outside. Okay, so when we're doing our marinades, because it's an oil-based marinade, it's really good at infusing the meat with the spices because a lot of the really good spice flavors are not water-soluble. And the one spice that we really like to use fresh is garlic because it's got those acids that really help with tenderizing. We'll use dried basil, rosemary, or any other spice if we don't have the fresh one available, but I really like to use fresh garlic. And I notice not a lot of people cook with it because it's a little hard to handle. But it really isn't if you just orient it with this little gadget here at the end, the pointy end towards your left hand. When you hit it, you can just pull the skin off in one motion. And then you're left with the nice meat of the garlic there. And that is going to be a nice base for our marinade. Okay? So we don't need to chop this up too much because we're going to blend it. And we're going to blend that with a nice little gadget here. I'll show you in a minute. So this can just go in here. And so in the marinade, we're going to use this wonderful turmeric base, organic, whatever it is, from the sisters, from the Franciscan sisters. We're going to use 1 tablespoon. Okay? And to slightly sweeten the bitter notes in that, we're going to use 2 teaspoons of a good, mild Hungarian paprika. Okay? And then we're going to use our liquid ingredients. Okay, so for liquid ingredients, we need an acid. Okay, now this recipe here is in ounces, but if you are used to cooking in grams, your scale will also display in grams. So we're going to use 1 ounce of vinegar, and I like using a real stout vinegar. And then what we're going to do is, as an emulsifier, we're going to use a good dark fermented soy sauce. This is not the kind of salty table soy sauce that you would normally use. If you don't have this, don't use the regular table stuff, just go without. Okay, so we're going to use a 1/2 ounce of this, and that's going to give us a good color, and it's going to act as a binder. Okay, and then we're going to use a good olive oil, and we're going to use 4 ounces of that. Now, we're only making 1 chicken tonight for our dinner because it is just the 2 of us. We can't possibly eat a chicken by ourselves. But I'm making a little extra anyway because we're going to use this marinade for the sweet potatoes. Okay, now, those are the ingredients for our marinade. And then what we're going to do to turn this into a nice emulsion that's going to give us our nice flavor infusion, we're going to use a hand blender. Hand blender is really a good alternative to a regular stand blender because it's capable of making a much thicker blend. So all we have to do is just stick that in there and hit it. Okay, now if you notice, this makes a really thick blend that's really hard to do in a regular blender. It's almost the consistency of peanut butter. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to take our sweet potatoes, and you notice I leave the skins on. This skins have a lot of fiber and nutrients, so we're going to keep that. Okay, and so we're going to just take a little bit of our marinade, and notice that I haven't put any salt in the marinade. But when you're using this for sweet potatoes, you want to put a little bit of salt in it. We want water to leach out of the sweet potatoes. We don't want to do that with the meat. So for the marinades, we always leave the salt out, and then we'll salt it at the very end just before we roast it. Okay? And so this is going to go for a good 4 hours or so, maybe more. Okay? All right. So that is our sweet potatoes. And we've got our rest of our marinade here for the chicken. And as long as we're doing our prep all at once, we're going to go ahead and take care of the red pepper sauce. Now, the key to a good red pepper sauce is that the red peppers have to be caramelized. It's absolutely crucial. And so for caramelization, what we'll do is we'll do that typically in the oven. This oven that I've got is really great. It's got a really beautiful, even heat. But a lot of ovens don't. So I'm going to use an alternative method that works just fine, which is pan roasting. And so what we're going to do with pan roasting is we're going to just take our vegetable ingredients and we're going to use a little bit of olive oil. And then this is going to be on low heat for a long time. This will be maybe about an hour or an hour and a half. And so we're going to use as the base these beautiful organic red bell peppers. And that's 2 bell peppers. And then we're going to use half an onion. A ratio of onions to bell pepper of about 4 to 1 is right. And then you should use some mushrooms. This is about 4 ounces of mushrooms. And really the best mushrooms to use are shiitake. Criminies are also good, but these are just plain white mushrooms. That'll work too. And then again, more fresh garlic. We're going to use 3 cloves. And because this is going to cook down and get really soft, you don't have to be real careful about chopping these up fine, because you're never going to, it's going to get blended anyway after it cooks. So these can be just rough chopped. Okay. And so I'm just going to chop these up a little bit. And watch your fingers. Okay, so then what we're going to do is we're going to put this on a low heat for a good hour and a half, very low, and just toss it every once in a while, about every 15 minutes or so. Okay, now the chicken. Again, I'm doing the chicken last because I don't want to cross-contaminate everything. So what we're going to do with the chicken, just like with the sweet potatoes, we're just going to take a whole prepared chicken, from which we've removed the giblets and all the other things from the inside. And we're just going to put that into a bag. And we're going to just take that wonderful, thick marinade that's thick enough that it isn't going to run all over the place. But when the chicken heats up in the oven, this emulsion is going to break, and then all that oil is going to run down into the pan, and that's not going to go onto the plate. It's just going to infuse the flavors into the meat, because these flavors are wonderfully oil soluble. Okay, so now we've got our chicken marinating. Okay, this marinade for this chicken because it's got vinegar in it, this makes the chicken quite stable. And it's going to reach its flavor peak in about a day. It can be roasted 2 or even 3 days from now. We're going to do this in about 12 hours. And then we have our sweet potatoes ready to go. And our flavor base for our red bell pepper is just going to be cooking away. And so in the next part, we're going to be putting things in the oven and making the sauce. And then after that, we get to